Good evening. Welcome again to the workshop of Wood Spun Round. This is Doug. I am so glad to have you today. We're turning a piece not unlike any other piece that I turn, but the reason why we're turning it is very, very different. This piece is it's to be donated to O.U.R, O.U.R, Operation Underground Railroad. Specifically, it's going to Art for O.U.R. This Art for O.U.R is a group of folks, artisans and other folks who are concerned about this whole issue of human trafficking. It has gotten to be of epidemic proportions throughout the world. No country is exempt from it. Right here in the United States, it happens. In fact, I've got a nephew who was not caught up in it, but come to find out that someone he had gotten kind of close to was. And so we're so happy that he escaped that problem or getting caught up in it. But there are people all over. You probably know somebody who may not have been trafficked, but they may have been close to being kidnapped or taken hostage into one of these human trafficking rings. And so Art for O.U.R raises money for O.U.R that goes in, they find these folks who are being trafficked, and then helps them not only get away to escape from their captors, but also the aftercare that's involved. I'm sure I'm not explaining this very well, but maybe, if you go to artforour.org, maybe in their auctions, you can find something that you like at a good price. Maybe there's something that they have on the website, on the shelves there in the website that you want, and you can just purchase it straight out. Either way, you can find some great pieces of art. This is a piece of Bradford Pear. It's a crotch piece, and so it has some really nice figure down in it. That's kind of what I'm working toward. Exposing that feather figure that is usually present in a crotch piece. And so that's what we're working on here. You see some bark inclusions right there. I've still got a flat spot. I'm going to work it down until I get rid of those flat spots on it. And so it gets to be a good bit smaller than what it started out as. But we've got it there, and we're just making some final cuts, some smoothing cuts. And then we're going to work on a couple of problem areas here in this wood. Wood being a natural product, quite often it has some problem areas. Kind of like us. So as people, we do things to cover up our problem areas sometimes. The way we put our clothes on, the way ladies put on their makeup. Sometimes men comb their hair in very certain ways so that they cover up a shortcoming or a problem area that they may have. So here I'm putting on some sanding sealer, and that will seal the wood because I'm going to use some CA glue on a couple of areas. I'll point those out as we get to them. In fact, you'll see what it is. But this sanding sealer here, even before I sand at all, what it's going to do is seal the wood so that the glue does not stain the wood and leave an ugly mark. So I've got the sanding sealer on there. I'm just kind of letting it dry. It doesn't take very long. I'm not putting gobs and gobs of sealer on there. But here's my CA glue, cyanoacrylate glue. We know it commonly as super glue. But this right there in that particular spot, there's just a real fine kind of a crack. this being crotch wood, there are three pith areas, the center of the branch, and wood tends to crack through those pith areas very quickly because that's usually the first area to dry. This is a little different spot here. This is a bark inclusion that had kind of a void along one edge. So what I'm doing is I put some glue down, and then I'm putting in some coffee grounds into that void, just using the cap of the glue, trying to keep some of the glue off of my fingers. I've had so much glue on my hands here lately that I just wanted to avoid it. But put a little more glue. I'll put a few more coffee grounds, and then we'll let that dry up good, and then we can begin to sand it. In fact, I'll come back with a tool and get off the high spots before we sand even. Adding that super glue just sets those coffee grounds into that groove, and the super glue and the coffee grounds work together extremely well. There I'm just taking a very light scraping cut just to get the high spots off of the wood so that I can sand and don't have to spend a long time going over the bumps that are left by that glue. And you can see it's just little wispy shavings that are coming off. It's doing a very, very good job. Oh yeah. Using a little Axe abrasive paste here. I've already sanded from 100 up to 320 grit, and then put some more sanding sealer on it. Now I'm going to put some of this abrasive paste on there. And this abrasive paste will take it from that 320 grit that I got it to with the sandpaper, and it's going to take my surface all the way up to about 1,000 grit. So it'll be really smooth when this is done. And it does it with no dust, so I don't have to worry about the vacuum. I don't have to wear dust protection, anything like that. The oil and wax that is used to as the carrier for the grit helps contain all of the dust, and my paper towel there will become very it'll get darker and darker as we go along until the grit is finished, and then it's a matter of buffing off all that wax and oil so that we go on to the next point. Just finishing up buffing here. I've already used the grit. You can see the reflection of the light, and as you can see, the Axe polish and restoring paste. This is a high carnauba content wax that'll just leave a nice soft shine on it, but also once it sets, the feel of this piece in your hand is just the best way I know to describe the feel. It's the feel of luxury. Super smooth, super warm feeling. It's not like holding metal. It's not like holding plastic. Just very warm, very soft feel in your hands. In some ways, I guess you could say it's a very sensuous feel. I can see this piece being used all over the house. Because the Axe abrasive and the Axe wax are both food safe, this could be used in the kitchen, on the dining room table. It could be used during a party, or maybe just as you're sitting around watching a movie at home. Put peanuts in it, or M&Ms, or Skittles, or whatever your treat of choice might be. Could go in this bowl, and it would be just like a big handful in this bowl. It's not a huge bowl. I think 2.5 by 4.25, something of that nature. Not very big at all. Well, we've turned it around, put the tenon in the chuck, and I'm hollowing it out here. And everything goes just kind of as prescribed, as expected here, using my 1/2-inch bowl gouge. But then I turn to the Easy Wood carbide tools fairly quickly. I am a demonstrator for Easy Wood tools, and because of that, I like to use the Easy Wood tools, period. Um, but now that I'm a demonstrator for Easy Wood tools, I like to make sure I show them a time or two throughout my videos, just because they're good enough to back me up a little bit, and so as a demonstrator for them, I need to practice once in a while as well. But they do an awfully good job. That was the #1 hollower. This is the um, Easy Wood finisher. This is the full-size finisher here. I've pretty well gotten done with the hollower. This tool has a little bit bigger cutter, and as a bigger cutter, I'm able to smooth the sides and the bottom a little easier and a little better than what that hollower does. The hollower removes wood very quickly, very effectively, very efficiently. And the finisher is able to smooth it quite a bit. And then I go through my sanding process, 100 grit to 320 grit, before I come back and I clean the grain. I blew it out and then use some alcohol here, just spraying it in there, using my towel to wipe out any residual sawdust that's in there, just kind of cleaning the pores of the wood out. And then I'll use my Axe abrasive paste, follow that up with the Axe polishing restoring wax. And it does, like I said, it does a super good job. Gives you a nice soft glow to the wood, but also that luxurious feel in your hand. And you may be saying, what in the world is this? This is an old tenon off another piece. I am kind of rounding it over, smoothing it out. This is going to become a jam chuck. I'm going to reverse this bowl again, put the inside of the bowl over this jam chuck so that I can remove the tenon off the bottom. That tenon on the bottom was what I held in the chuck jaws so that I could do the inside of the bowl. But now I need to reverse it again and take that tenon off. It serves no purpose anymore. So I'll smooth out this little jam chuck, and you'll see I'll install or put the bowl over that and push my tailstock up against the tenon here in just a moment. There you can see the jam chuck has just been smoothed over. I'm going to pick up a piece of non-slip cloth. This is like a drawer liner. Put it inside the bowl. There's that tenon and the old nub that I left intentionally so I could reposition this, put the tailstock right back where it was originally. And I can tighten that up against that jam chuck and be centered right off the bat. Had to get my finger out of the way. Not a lot of extra room in there. So the last little bit, I actually had to let the bowl fall, but it was able to be centered right back up without any problem. I could pick the bowl up and then bring that tailstock up as tight as I needed it to be. Bring in my tool rest, and I'll go back to my 1/2-inch bowl gouge. And at the very end, I'll use a 3/8 spindle detail gouge. It's just as I finish up the removal of the tenon and the removal of the nub at the very end. You can't see it very well, but I'm using that bowl gouge just to take that tenon off. I'm cutting toward the headstock, away from the tailstock here. That way I'm pushing the wood in onto the lathe, not pushing it away from that jam chuck or away from the nub. I don't want to do that. I just pushing straight into the headstock so it has less temptation to jump off and cause damage. As you can see, that tendon is disappearing relatively quickly. There's not much wood there. It's a little bit of a smoothing cut going across. Really not removing a lot of wood, just taking off some high spots that were left by going into the bowl. So I went across just to smooth it out. Just removing a little bit more of that nub, making it a bit smaller. Not going to take it off just yet. Got a couple more things I want to do. In fact, that's that spindle detail gouge. It's a small tool. It's sharpened like a bowl gouge, even though it's a spindle gouge. But that gives that tool a nice sharp little point, able to get into some small areas and get some real fine detail taken care of. But while we're still here, while it's still on the lathe, I'm going to get my sandpaper out, just sand by hand with the lathe running. Again, start at 100 and we'll work our way all the way up to 320. Doesn't take just a moment, just a small area. Got the vacuum on, it's making all kinds of racket, driving me crazy. I'm done with the sanding, so now I've got my 1/4 inch skew laid on its side. I'm just making some little lines in the bottom here. Those lines help me with my mark. You'll see at the very end, put my name, the wood species, and the date on it. Just some hand sanding and then some hand waxing just to finish it up. And that's it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do take a look. Go over to Art for Hour and take a look at the auctions. Take a look at the art pieces on the website that are up for sale. Give it a good going over. Maybe there's something you need, maybe something that strikes you as a great gift. We're not that far away from Christmas. It's a good time for that. I thank you for being with us today. This is Doug at Wood Spun Round. Until we meet again, I hope you're able to spin them round.